every industry is finding a need and a way to apply these for helping with safety or investigation or engineering or construction. You're representing something from real life. You're capturing existing reality.
I didn't really want to do something that I could never be great at. Suddenly found myself selling portable 3D measurement equipment to aerospace and automotive manufacturers. Our goal is to be able to give that to somebody that's in the field, not like necessarily a technical user. Open that package, assemble that stuff, and turn on the application and be walking a job site in 30 minutes. They know that they need photos.
Yeah.
It helps them have a very clear record of like what's behind walls and slabs. Traveling to job sites, being able to remotely look at what's happening and sort of walk around any point in time that you can go back to and reference. For all the folks out there who are thinking about starting a business, it's a grind for a long time until you come up with something that you really can, that where the timing is right for it to take off.
You work for 10 years and then you become an overnight success.
Exactly.
Welcome to the Reality Capture Network. Today we are excited to have Matt Daly from StructionSite in the studio with us here in Boise. Matt, welcome.
Awesome to be here. Really excited to get here on such a beautiful, warm, sunny day here in Boise.
And where'd you join us from today?
So I flew from Oakland.
Sweet. All right. Well, per normal, I really like our podcast to be kind of digging into the guest and the individual and their background. I think there's a lot of value in learning about individuals as well as the business they're in and the industry they're in. But even just on a personal note, I like to hear the story of like, how'd you start? Where'd you grow up? What was your life like? That then led into school and your career. So maybe we could start back in the day.
Yeah. I'll try to go back as far as actually make sense here.
Yeah.
Let's start with college, right? So studied mechanical engineering, went to UC San Diego, and really the key thing there was I got out of college and quickly realized that I was never going to be the best engineer, and for me that was a good thing to learn and understand that just, I didn't really want to do something that I could never be great at. And it was just clear to me that I wasn't great. I wasn't a great engineer. And so actually it started to look into, my grandfather was in operations for some very large sort of startup that was, Silicon Valley way back in the day. And he convinced me to just look into sales. And so I did. And Faro ended up finding me, a headhunter actually found me and was like, hey, technical background, you played sports. He's like, these are all things that I was a recruiter, maybe not supposed to tell you, but this is why we're talking, and here's why we're having this conversation. Are you interested? Drove up from San Diego to Orange County to go meet what ultimately became my boss. Interviewed with him, and suddenly found myself selling portable 3D measurement equipment.
Wow.
To aerospace and automotive manufacturers. So those guys kind of took a risk on me, and I went from engineering into sales. And I think maybe another sort of important part of that was that sort of my grandfather on my mom's side was the same guy that was like, look, engineering is going to get you pretty far, but if you ever want to do something more than that, you got to learn how to sell. This is like core life skill that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, and just, you don't have to do sales. You can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece of it. Faro, as most people know, sort of traditionally aerospace and automotive manufacturing, a lot of stuff that they're doing in the manufacturing space. 2010, fateful product release for them, the Focus 3D laser scanner comes out, and my boss taps me on the shoulder and he's like, I think you're going to want to look at this thing. It looks, they had this bigger scanner for a long time, and it was like $90,000. And, if you ever try to travel with that thing, you know how big of a pain that was, which even that was an improvement over sort of previous generations.
Yep.
And so I ended up, suddenly transitioning to that product and found myself going from an aerospace and automotive manufacturing environment to job sites and architects. And you're just talking to a totally different group of people. And that's where I met Philip. So I met my co-founder Philip back in 2012 or 13, somewhere in there. He was working as a project engineer at Kaiser Oakland Hospital job.
Okay.
So very close to where our office is today. And I always like to say, Philip was the guy walking around the job site with a set of blueprints and a highlighter, marking down stuff that had been installed. He was also the VDC engineer, so he was like coordinating models for basically all their different trades. And but he was also the guy who was unfortunately responsible with trying to figure out how to take laser scan data and do something useful with it for the owner in this case. And that was where this whole sort of relationship began with a company actually called Rhythm.
Yeah.
So you probably remember.
I do.
It's still around.
Yeah.
It's amazing that thing is still kicking. But that was kind of where we began, and I'll pause there. But that's it all started with the Kaiser Oakland Hospital project and Philip not having any practical way of turning laser scan data into a deliverable.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You were that's actually, most people don't know. That's when we met, was actually back then. You were working at Faro, and the firm I was working at the time was looking into laser scanners, and that was one of our first units we ever utilized, was that new Faro release.
Yeah. That's right. Electrical substation somewhere in Bakersfield.
Yep. Lots of electrical, lots of oil and gas out there, and that was our first application for it.
Yeah.
So what was, when you were in the middle of Faro sales still, you were working in terrestrial scanners. What was the point, talking with Philip, and what was the story or journey of starting StructionSite?
Yes, it started with Rhythm. And,
with Rhythm, okay.
That was Philip basically coming to me and saying, hey, like we should build that. Philip was the guy who would call me at 11 o'clock at night using a combination of Ferrocene, Trimble RealWorks, and Autodesk Civil 3D to produce a contour map.
Yeah.
That met this, that was what ultimately they as a builder wanted. And so now he'd call me at 11 o'clock at night and be like, dude, your software sucks. It's not built for you. It's not, there's nothing that is easily going to be able to create this deliverable you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so dude, go build it better. Fix it.
Yeah.
And ultimately gave him some money, and he did.
Yeah.
So he started Rhythm ultimately to solve that problem of initially being able to take reality captured data and produce these deliverables that builders were actually interested. You could just hand it to somebody and say, this is a cut fill map for your concrete, right? You can go grind and fill this thing now and actually make a decision from this data as opposed to a point cloud. And so we, I ultimately in leaving Faro, like every sort of dumb first time entrepreneur, this is going to scale. This is going to be amazing. And you have these massive dreams. And ultimately what of course we learned was, you couldn't get a superintendent on a job site to go scan stuff. You just could not. The scalability of LiDAR technology was very far away from being even where it is today.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking 10 years ago at this point. And things have changed a lot. And so that is changing rapidly. But 10 years ago, that was not even close. The sort of confluence of things that led to StructionSite was realizing LiDAR couldn't scale and that you could never really scale that business. And then basically at the same time, sometime around 2015, I think it was Ricoh came out with the Theta.
Yeah.
And it was this consumer grade point and shoot camera that captured things in 360 and had an SDK. So a software developer could tap into that and actually use it. And that was it. That was that moment was the cost of capturing data declining to zero effectively, and a tool that we knew we could give to a superintendent and say, hey, can you go snap a few pictures of your job?
Yep.
And it was scalable in that way. And then the other thing is, of course, 2012, everything happening with ImageNet and deep learning, the cost of capturing an image is going to zero. The value of an image is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And all the different things you can do. And then you add in everything that's happening with self-driving cars and SLAM. Those technologies come into play with what you can do with that data. And so it was kind of all of that that ultimately led to. So I feel like whenever people are curious about what it's like, this formation point of a company, it's never a point.
Yeah.
It's always this long, gross, messy, journey where you've been trying to do something for a really long time. You thought it was going to work and it didn't, and it failed, and you just couldn't tell. And then all of a sudden the stars align and then it can take off, and the timing is right and the technology's there. So for all the folks out there who are thinking about starting a business, it's a grind for a long time until you come up with something that you really can, that where the timing is right for it to take off.
You work for 10 years and then you become an overnight success.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's always it. That's always it.
So, and I think a lot of people, even though these technologies have been around for a while, laser scanning, 360 photo, the uses on different job sites, I feel personally, I work and talk with a lot of people around the country. I still feel like both are not very adopted yet. I mean, 2 out of 10 job sites are implementing any of these tools as much as they could be or should be, or getting the value out of them, or trying to figure out what value to get out of.
Yeah.
So, when you look at the differences between a job site that's doing laser scanning or when they may want to look into photo, why would a job site want the photo side?
You would want the photo side. It's interesting. Photo documentation is this thing that the construction industry has for a very long time sort of put on the back burner because it has created so little value for them. Historically, you take a bunch of pictures, you stick it in a folder, and you hope that nobody gets sued later so that you don't need to go look at those things. Because the chances of you finding what you need and the needle in the haystack of pictures that you took is so small.
Oh, yeah.
And so like the construction industry in particular is still overcoming this knowledge that photo documentation is a waste of time. Like they're just like, they know that because that has proven to be true over time for them. And so for us, I guess trying to get back to your original question of like, why photos, they know that they need photos because today it does a couple of big things for them. It helps them have a very clear record of like what's behind walls and slabs.
Yep.
Again, scanners are used for very similar things. This is just a little bit more accessible for the people in the field. And traveling to job sites, that's another really big one. That is just being able to remotely look at what's happening and sort of walk around has been another one. And that's less about the photos themselves and more sort of about the touring functionality.
Yep.
And then the last piece is, again, any builder that's been around long enough knows that at some point or another, something of that job, any point in time that you can go back to and reference, a claim comes in, a change order comes in. Newer builders are like, who cares?
Yeah.
They haven't been bitten by anything yet, so it doesn't matter. But if you've been around, that's usually where the value from the sort of photo piece comes. We have this challenge right now still in the industry. To your point, I think you said very low adoption. We look at, 75% of our conversations, let's call it, with customers, they don't know what this stuff is.
Yeah.
They've not heard it. They're not using it.
Yep.
They're totally green. And that's our challenge and our opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's funny, I talk to so many different people that think it's already so far spread, like everybody's laser scanning. But then I'm like, no, like it feels like it because some of us have been in the industry for a while and it's what we do. We're around scanning a lot. But I think it's just now getting to the point that like certain major project types or industries are starting to require aspects of it. Like, historically it was really optional. It seemed like extra and candy, on top. But now it's getting to the point that, certain projects like hospital renovations or airports or oil and gas facilities, like certain industry types where it's been used, they got past that initial like somebody needs to take the chance to champion it and spend the money. They have found the ROI piece, and I see certain project types starting to actually have it as a requirement of, look, here's the contract, we're doing expansion on XYZ building. The first requirement is you're going to survey it, you're going to laser scan it, you're going to create a scan to BIM so that there's a model for the whole design team to work with. Because then we can get into what's also been proven is like the BIM modeling process and the model coordination. But that's like 2 out of 10 industries or project types. And even in those industries, there's a lot of, let's say airports, for example. I think there's a couple airports maybe that have gotten to that point, but then there's 1,500 other airports that haven't even touched it yet.
It's always the big ones, it's the biggest, most complex projects and assets, facilities that end up leading the charge because of the complexity and the cost. And usually at the end of the day, everything you've mentioned there has one thing in common, which is the asset downtime is very expensive, right? Airports, when airports go down and have stuff that's not like the cost of that is huge. A data center, a hospital, when those things are not online, there's a real serious problem, and that's where you see this greater investment in risk reducing activities that help you make sure that thing is running.
Yeah. I mentioned to someone the other day, I was like, scanning up front is scanning or documenting, even the photo, they're both accomplishing the same goal in the fact that if you do it up front, it's really like you're paying for insurance.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay for insurance, but if you end up needing it, you're going to wish you had it.
Yeah. And by a lot.
A lot.
Like, you'll really wish you had it.
Yeah.
And it is more than that. What you
Definitely.
laser scanning is it is more than that. And even that is kind of even a challenge, I think, for us in the sort of photo world where on one hand, the 3 use cases I mentioned, one of those feels very much like an insurance policy. You're insuring the job against things going sideways. And that is, in the sort of software world, there's this notion of time to value.
Mm-hmm.
How long between you do or pay for a thing and you get value from it.
Yeah.
Insurance has this incredibly long time to value problem where you might get value, maybe. It's also uncertain value.
Yeah.
Way down the road. But it's also like you have to kind of dial that back to like what are the value props and the use cases where you get something right now.
Yep.
And just try to focus on that.
Yep.
Also knowing that the sort of insurance policy aspect of it exists.
Yep.
And always will, but also trying to focus more on how do you coordinate a better job and hold on to your schedule today?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing I think when I look at, a project site and kind of the overall life cycle of the project. So many people, again, still don't know these technologies exist. They don't know the capabilities of being able to quickly do photo documentation or laser scan it, or how to control that, or what scanner to use, and then how to actually use that data into a model. Or I think that, and this is why we love educating and talking about this stuff so much, is people are out there searching for like, hey, I've heard about these new technologies, but I have no idea where to start.
Yeah.
I think the ultimate dream is like, there's a way to integrate all of them to make the overall life cycle of that project super successful.
Yeah.
And I think even a lot of projects and companies that are using one of them now, they're not looking at it, like you said, in multiple use cases. They're doing a laser scan or a photo. They're wanting a floor plan, or they're wanting just to visualize what was in the wall. But when you actually look at, okay, how many different departments or use cases can come from one documentation of a site? It's like, well, we could use it for training new staff.
Yep.
We could use it for creating the floor plans and exit routes. We could use it for the insurance piece. There's so many uses of the data. But I think that it just, again, this is why I want to push education so much through podcasting, through conference, through training seminars, whatever, because most people just don't know where to start and they don't even know what is available.
Yeah, I think you said something, to rewind for a little bit on what you said there, with totally related to this. These are all related points where you're thinking that there's a use case for this reality capture data over here and it's being used for this thing. You've got this other data over here and it's being used for this thing. I think what's missing in all of that is this like forced shared coordinate system, right? Because if everybody had to collect, you mentioned survey control, right? And with your survey background, you appreciate this more than anybody, right? I feel like I'm pumping surveyors here, but what they get right, it really is, and even going all the way upstream to the owner. If the owner had a concept of a shared coordinate system that it was top down, sort of pushing to people who are going to provide services to them, that would at least force people to sort of try to get on the literal same playing field, right? The same construction drawing, the same coordinates. So when we do stuff, when we capture things, that there isn't that right now.
Yeah.
And so it's just the Wild West. It's just a bunch of data being collected in different silos that doesn't necessarily come together. And so I would, one thing I would really like to see in that, and like you had Josh Stefano on here the other day, right? So who's with, USIBD, they have some initiative focused on this. Yeah. And like the imagery, basically there's like a committee focused on construction imagery that is trying to build these sort of bridges between how you share, in one case, scan or 360 photo data. But that's, of course, two different types of data, right? Models and everything else, it all has a coordinate system. It's just not unified today. And unfortunately, we have these like weird, sloppy state plane versus local versus this. Like there needs to be a better way to to have somebody say what the right coordinates are that this job should be on.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to provide services of any sort, including even ours, like StructionSite, we would prefer, right, if you want to deliver this to the owner at the end of the day, that it's been rotated and put on this coordinate system. That way later you could get access to all this this information where you want it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big piece that, we've seen be an issue on jobs is like, different providers get pulled out for different aspects of a project. One knows how to control it, one doesn't. One's using a site coordinate, one's not. And then you end up with this data that really is hard to actually put together and be usable, or you end up getting the owner unsure of like, wait, which one's right, or who was supposed to put it on what. And that's why I think, we come from a survey background, so we do talk about that a lot. And it's not in a selfish way of like, man, we want more survey work. It's more, dude, we have
maybe a little bit,
maybe a little, just we'll take some of it. We'll help you out.
Yeah.
No, it's really because we have integrated that process on projects and it works. We see other companies out there where they'll buy a scanner, they'll buy a drone, they'll buy 360 cameras, they'll buy mobile scanners, terrestrial scanners, and they've never even heard of survey control. And you go out there to a job site and you use all these different tools and you're trying to merge these datas together, and some of them have built-in error. And so people hear me talk about survey and they're like, you're just pushing that because you guys are a survey company. I'm like, no, it's because there are processes with a lot of these tools that actually help keep the data accurate. Mm-hmm. And it also takes away the headache of trying to align the data. If I go inside and do scanning and I go outside and I do drone, and those are both hit with control points, I don't have to try to merge them anymore. They're on the same coordinate system.
Yep.
They fall right where they're supposed to be. And being able to loop in imagery with that and put them on the same floor plans and the model be integrated there, it lets the owner or the project team pick and choose and use different tools at different points of the project and not have those issues.
Yeah, but how many owners know about that?
I know. Yeah, that's the problem.
How many owners do you know that have the idea of a shared coordinate system in their head? There's very few.
Yeah.
And usually it's the ones who have hired former builders who are now on their staff.
Yep.
That maybe have that idea of survey control.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's a big missing piece of the puzzle of the ultimate value of all this being achieved. Because if you think about that too, right, even all the way down to instrumenting your facility with a bunch of devices and sensors for IoT, that would benefit from a shared coordinate system as well. And it just doesn't seem like that is a priority yet at the owner level. And but it needs to be. That's
a good point. Well, bringing up that idea of shared coordinates globally on a project, I like that one. That's a good point. That's a good point. For those that, honestly, I think there's a lot of people who have not done any 360 photo documentation on a site. Would you kind of give us the basics, the basic walkthrough of like, how does it work? What's the actual hands-on process for someone that wants to implement that on a job? What does it look like?
The best place to start is with, somebody in the field who is already doing some sort of photo documentation. Again, going back to builders with experience who know and have been in a position where that data would have really helped them out are usually a good place to start because they understand the value of it. And then we're just giving them a better way to do it. Yeah. And instead of having a bunch of, photos in your iCloud folder that you're going to sift through later, and you're probably even not going to try because the likelihood of you seeing that piece of rebar right there is exactly the one that I need on level 3 next to, the stairwell is very low.
Yeah.
And so, like for us, we just try to get started. We send people a camera kit that has basically a camera, all the stuff you need, a light, a monopod, a hard hat mount. And our goal is to be able to give that to somebody that could open that package, and that's in the field, not like necessarily a technical user. Open that package, assemble that stuff, and turn on the application and be walking a job site in 30 minutes. Yeah. Right? Because the drawings are coming from whatever they're using, whether it's Procore, Autodesk, or some other drawing repository. And so that's the goal. We're trying to reduce the friction there and make that as easy as possible so that, they've got the app. It should look and feel a lot like some of their other applications because, frankly, we've sort of tried to design it in a way that feels a little bit PlanGrid, Procore-esque. Yeah. Right, where it's simple to navigate and they understand, if you can, use a drawing navigation software and order an Uber, we want to. You should be able to. You should be able to hit record and walk. The biggest challenge that anybody runs into, I think, in this space is, it's connecting a device to your phone.
Yeah.
That is the single biggest point of friction that exists, because if somebody's not done that before and they're not used to it, but it's becoming more and more common, right? People are getting pretty used to connecting devices, usually via Bluetooth, to their phone. Less so with Wi-Fi, which is how it all works today. But it's getting easier all the time. If Apple or Google ever comes out with a 360 camera, it's
sold.
It's gonna be it's just the best camera is the one in your pocket.
Yeah,
and so even now, like with the newer phones, they have that sort of like half zoomed out mode where it feels a little bit like a pano.
Yeah,
it's getting there. It's getting closer, but when that happens, it'll be
crazy.
Very, very easy.
Just hold your iPhone up and.
So it's so funny because we've been talking about that for years. Even all the way back to the early days at Faro. We were what would it be like if it was iPhone in your pocket?
Yeah.
And it's here. You have LiDAR in your pocket.
There's even a camera on both sides of the phone.
It's exactly. You're right. Exactly. There actually at one point there was, and I don't know what happened to it. There was a little attachment that you could slip on top of your phone that used the built-in dual-sided cameras and put spherical lenses on both sides. And I have no idea what happened to that, but I don't think it either worked very well or maybe it didn't stitch properly. In the end, I think it was like a company that either failed or died or whatever. But that was kind of it. It was that concept of you snap it on your phone. Yeah. There's nothing, like no calibration, no connection needed. It just works.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
So you mentioned you send a kit that's got the gear in it. They download the app and they can upload a floor plan or a drawing of their building into the app. Yep. And now the whole goal with that is instead of taking standalone pictures, you're actually tagging where in the building or job site your photo is being taken.
Yeah, so it started as the user would have to locate themselves on a drawing. Again, sort of think ordering an Uber. You're finding yourself on the map. You're here. You're capturing a still 360 photo. And that workflow still exists. It's still popular for certain types of, if you're closing walls or doing any sort of capture where the highest clarity of image is needed, that's a good workflow. It's sort of migrated to, and a much more popular workflow for us today is what we call video walk, where a user taps their location and says, I'm here, puts their phone away, either on the hard hat or on a selfie stick, is just walking and recording. They're not stopping. They're not locating themselves. The software is using the same vision and mapping technology that you're going to find in a self-driving car. Like at one point we had an engineer working for us that was building self-driving cars for Uber. And so a lot of that same tech is being used to automatically place stuff on a drawing for the user, which ultimately leads to, of course, when you're on a job and you have a question or something's going wrong, like where your head is going to, where is that?
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing you're trying to figure out. Well, on level 2 in the men's bathroom, there's an issue with the plumbing. Great. Like, do I thumb through my stack of photos or do I just go look at a drawing that has a bunch of pictures already located right there and then pull up what I've got there? So the user does that walk, come back. They basically, end the walk and upload it to our server, and our software sort of does the magic for them.
Okay. And that walk is taking video.
It's a video. Yeah. It's a time-lapse video.
Yeah.
So it's not a 30 frame per second video. So the file sizes are pretty manageable.
Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a big upgrade. There's still so many people going out to job sites, taking pictures manually, and man, the mess that comes back full of folders full. And then it's always, you never know. You're like, okay, I see that picture of something I wanted to look at, but I have no idea which one in the building that is.
I sat next to on the plane a intern that would not graduate yet, but that was doing an internship with one of the large GCs up here, and he's like, StructionSite, what is that? What do you guys do? And I showed him on the plane, and he was like, wow, that's amazing. But like he had no idea, this is a young person coming out of college. Yep. This is as technologically savvy as our industry is going to get, right? With this guy sitting right next to me, and yeah, just the level of awareness it isn't there yet, and it will be, and it'll take some time, but it's it just goes to show you that we're a long ways away from being anything that resembles fully penetrated
Oh no.
in this industry.
Yeah. I don't think any of it is. You know, we look at all the technologies that we try to focus on. You know, when we started Reality Capture Network, we, you know, our initial focus was laser scanning, and we're like, oh, here's, you know, we came up with the name. Now we're like, okay, well, we're not only focused on reality capture, and I think that most of the tools we're talking about actually do still fit in there because, you know, we focus on everything that has to do with going out and collecting information, bringing it back and processing it, visualizing or creating deliverables out of it. So from laser scanners, LiDARs, photo cameras, photogrammetry, drones, robotics, all of the capture into the deliverables. And I think there's just not enough resources out there. Yep. There's nowhere to go learn about all this. This was one of our goals in this platform, which started as a podcast, grew to the conference, grew to an online education center, is I want to have a place to go research and say, what are all the tools? What are all the softwares? What's the application and the benefit here? So even like, you know, these kids coming out of college that are going into that role in a construction internship have an understanding of these tools because most of the firms don't.
Yeah.
And so having that resource and continuing to push that education, I think will help the industry along a bit, and hopefully it helps more adoption.
Yeah, I mean it's needed. It's totally needed. You know, I don't like your challenge is going to be how do you make sure that student coming out of this construction management program is aware of RCN and making sure that that's a resource for them, right? Or maybe you just kick butt on Google search. There you go. and that way when people are looking, because the thing is, like, I think the biggest challenge a lot of times is people are not looking.
Yeah.
It's gonna take better tools like content like what you guys are providing here.
Yeah. I think those are the types of people that I have found within construction firms or engineering firms or architecture firms that really do help the adoption. Is there's always that one guy that's like has the interest in the tools and he becomes the champion internally of like, I really think this is going to work. This is how we should integrate drones or cameras or, so my initial goal is like, let's find more of those champions and teach them about the tools and the proper workflows and technologies to help them kind of scale, because it is a lot. You know, there's so many companies around the country, around the world. I think the adoption, like if I had to give a percentage, I literally think 10% of the firms that should be using these tools have even touched one of them.
Yep.
So let's talk about the current and maybe even the future a little bit.
Yeah.
So you guys are growing, continuing to put, time into your current platform. Where do you see some of the future of, and maybe there's things you can or can't share, but where do you see the future of like your guys's platform or role kind of in the industry?
Yeah, it's the sort of vision that we have for our business, I think is shared by some other companies as well, which I think is great because it sort of shows that ultimately this is happening.
Yeah.
It will exist. And so we call it intelligent project tracking internally, like at our, that's a, I wish more people would just call it that, but like whatever we can agree on that, what is this platform that helps a builder and maybe some other people along the life cycle as well, including owners and trade partners, really manage and use all of this reality capture data. There's site cameras, there's laser scan data, all of this stuff. And there are a number of platforms that are sort of looking to aggregate and consolidate. And I think that will happen over time.
Yeah.
I think that will just sort of naturally happen over time as frankly, consolidation happens where companies are joining other companies sort of like combine and merge. Those things, I think we'll start to see more of that soon and in the next couple of years. And again, if I were to sort of paint the picture of what we think that platform looks like, it's a place that allows you to work with all these different forms of reality capture data. There is a lot of drone data. There is a lot of 360 photo data. There's site cameras. There's laser scan data, all of this stuff. And there are a number of platforms that are sort of looking to aggregate and consolidate. And I think that will happen over time.
Yeah.
I think that will just sort of naturally happen over time as frankly, consolidation happens where companies are joining other companies sort of like combine and merge. Those things, I think we'll start to see more of that soon and in the next couple of years. And again, if I were to sort of paint the picture of what we think that platform looks like, it's a place that allows you to work with all these different forms of reality capture data. Not that you're going to recreate what any of these companies have built, but just be able to ingest and use drone data and see other forms of information as sort of like step one. And we've been very focused there at just automating the sort of 360 photo capture part of the process. Mm-hmm. And then the second piece is really starting to look at the plan and what the plan means to a lot of different things in this industry, depending on who you're talking about, right? And that could be the schedule, it could be the model, it could be your quantities, it could be any number of things, things that sort of constitute the plan. And then you're sort of looking at all of that, reality and the plan, and you're delivering these different sort of things to your customer. It's progress and understanding how the work is actually progressing relative to that plan. It's quality and looking at how quality is mapping up against what you expected to actually build. And then the last piece of it, I think, is actually interesting because it's sort of a natural outgrowth that we didn't initially expect, but makes perfect sense given that we think this is a sort of standalone platform that sort of sits next to your traditional project management systems like your Procores and your Autodesk Builds and your Trimble project sites of the world. And that last piece is like an app ecosystem where like what we're finding too is there's a lot of other software companies that would like to just use the data that's coming out of our system because the customer has standardized on this as a capture platform and they want to analyze safety. We integrate with a company called Numetrics that delivers safety insights and now predictions about which jobs are going to need the most attention to make sure that your company is being safe. And a number of other companies that have their own way of sort of tracking progress. But I think the future that I guess we see, the sort of first order problem to solve isn't aggregating the data. That's important, and I think will just continue to happen over time. It's sort of the progress and quality stuff. Like our customers are looking for tell me something more than just what these photos and videos are telling me. Yeah. Like give me an answer, give me an insight, help me go make an action and do something to keep this job on schedule and under budget. Yeah. And so that's really where we're focusing more of our energy today is in the tracking piece. So we spent 4 years capturing stuff. Yep. We'll continue to work on that. Yep. That work will continue. And there's sort of a layer of that of just automation. Yeah. Nobody wants to spend time capturing data. Yeah. Right. We all know that. There's mobile scanners, there's robot dogs, there's all sorts of things that are sort of on the fringes here that customers want the automation. They don't want to spend that time. But what we're really focused on is that next layer, which is the tracking piece. Okay. Which is basically, how do I take this information and deliver something to a customer that helps them actually make more money on this project by keeping the job on time, under budget, and having data that protects them if things go sideways. So it's the progress piece. Yeah. Is really where we're going to continue to be focused.
And so from your guys' side, it is taking AI and vision learning and, looking at the image that the team is already capturing in comparison to a model to try to give percentages or insights, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think the benchmark you use to compare against is interesting. We ultimately came up with almost like a taxonomy of what we call progress tracking for construction, where like on one hand you have nothing, right? And I think I'll give credit to my co-founder Philip here, who's sort of using the same taxonomy as self-driving cars. Level 0 is your car doesn't do anything. Yeah. Level 1 is driver assist, and level 5 is your car fully autonomously drives itself. Yep. And somewhere in between there, you have these different levels that are sort of getting you all the way to full autonomy, and we sort of see the like laser scanning to BIM point clouds that feels like level 5, like that feels like the end, where you are going all the way to the end state. And that's not to say that it's wrong. It's just for us, we sort of looked at that and said that's a little bit more narrow than we want to be focused on right now. Because honestly, Matt, you tell me, how many jobs do you go to that have a LOD 350 400 BIM that could be used to track production because the model was generated the way that you build it? Yeah.
That's probably a problem.
It's a really small number. Right? Yeah. It's a very small number. And so it's a really hard problem to solve. It's a really small number of projects. And there are, as we talked about earlier, parts of the industry that have invested
Yeah.
in models and modeling and their procedures there. And the trajectory of that is good.
Yeah.
You know, it's moving in a really good direction, but it's still really far away.
Yeah.
For us to look at that as like a viable way of tracking a project. We want to be able to track almost any project and deliver something valuable. And so the next level for us was, we call it level 3, and it was it's quantity takeoffs. And so you're looking at the drawings. So now you're away from LiDAR and BIM, and you're sort of down to 2D drawings and photos.
Yep.
And that's kind of, we created a product called Smart Track. And even that, with a simpler incoming data set and photos only, is still like, you can scale that, but it's very difficult to, and it's still very expensive. Like, you can go to any general contractor today. Hey, I'm gonna need send me your drawings, and I'm either gonna have to redo all of your quantities, or I'm gonna need you to send me those quantities. And you're not gonna find very many GCs, if any, that are like, yeah, I've got that. Yeah, I've got that information ready for you. Yep. So there's a little bit of a gap there too.
Yep.
And so I think we are exploring different ways to track projects that are scalable. Yeah. That could just be turned on for customers. Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, we're very excited about what's happening with models. We have a Autodesk BIM integration that's coming out. Nice. And then this year that we continue. We did Procore BIM already, and now we're doing Autodesk's BIM. There's I think it's Forge, right? And so we continue to invest in that without trying to overinvest in that as a way of tracking stuff, because it's a heavy lift. Yeah. Very few projects invest in BIM the way a data center does, the way a hospital does. Yep. And these are all the projects that kind of you're referring to as well right now too. Those projects sometimes are ready for that. Yeah. Yeah. Every
other job, it's like no scans, no BIM, one or the other. It's piecemealed. I think, like you said, the trajectory of the need for some of those, or the desire for them, is there. I think a big part I see as well is, even when people find out about these tools, or even if their dream is, okay, I want fully controlled, laser scanned, full BIM model, the lack of knowledge on how to get there, I see as a big problem, as well as to the adoption rate of. Even companies that go out and buy a scanner think it's super simple because they were sold, hey, press the button and it's scanned. And, then they get into this, 10-story building, and they're like, why is my building drifting, to the left? And I think that one of our struggles in that adoption of survey, laser scan, drone, BIM, as-built BIM, is that there's actually some deep technical piece there that needs to be trained. And there's a lack of personnel that know how to do it really well. Your guys' target is like, okay, we know that's going to take a while to get there. Your solution can be implemented now on every project and help from the visual way, through, like you're mentioning, with tracking and stuff. Even though that's going to take a while to get there, yours is not it's a part of that issue.
It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, like, it would have been much harder to do what we do if it's like, you got to survey control your jobs. Yeah. And we have to know where that control is. I mean, I value, like, personally, I value survey control very highly. I think every job should have it, and it should be very clear what that is. And again, I think part of what's missing there is the owner doesn't realize that this is happening. Their jobs are, we're laying out your job. There's a survey out there. Yeah. whether you're aware of it or are asking for it.
There's always somewhere.
Whether you're aware, whether the owner is aware or asking for it or not is kind of a different story. But yeah, like that is, so our philosophy here has definitely been sort of what you're getting at, is like, our philosophy has been to try to meet the industry where it is. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're as excited about trying to be on, mega projects. Like, we are absolutely used on all of these projects. Yeah. Data centers, hospitals. Yep. There's a lot of risk. People want to photo document those jobs, so we get used on them. But not necessarily optimizing for tracking stuff in a way that would only allow us to sort of be there. And there are some companies doing that work that are phenomenal companies and really smart people that are sort of tackling that. Yeah. And that's just another interest, and another reason for us that we're sort of staying focused on, I think, the broader part of the market that is ready to adopt something today frankly just needs help getting from photos in a folder to what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say, is there an industry, like, do you specifically target a certain industry, or are there use cases you're like, it doesn't really make sense to utilize as a platform?
Yeah, I mean, really we focus on builders
Yep.
and owners.
Okay.
And that means trades, GCs, owners, that spectrum.
Yep.
We don't spend as much time focusing on architects and engineers, because they do get value from the solution, but it's not at the same scale that a builder or an owner who's taking that risk will have.
Yeah.
And so just the value they get is higher.
Yeah.
Because the risk they're taking is higher. And so we tend to focus there. And that's just a matter of, do we have people in these other groups that use our products? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's not generally where we tend to focus our energy.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the term digital twin?
I've heard several definitions of this. I think a tool at DPR has a pretty good version of it, and I don't want to butcher it, so I won't try to repeat it. But I don't know if you guys can put something in the show notes. I'll try to send it to you. But he had a pretty good definition, I feel like, of a digital twin, and I think ultimately it's very much it's being used in some very, very interesting ways.
Very many ways.
Pretty broad, and pretty marketing teams are taking a lot of liberties with the term digital twin. We really try not to use that term, because we are not a digital twin platform. I think we're a part of that solution.
Yeah.
Right. We are one piece of data that very much should be a part of a digital twin, in conjunction with a model and potentially some sensors and other things that sort of help bring that asset to life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I it's a loaded term that I think is good. I think what's important is that the industry is looking for a way to talk about the sort of nexus, if you will, or bringing together of models and reality capture and IoT. These are all very sort of buzzy things that do need to come together, right? And when we talk about a shared coordinate system, a digital twin might be an easier way for people to just think about why you need a shared coordinate system. I need a shared coordinate system because at the end of this project, I want a digital twin.
Yeah.
and like that might be it, right? Because like having to have a conversation with an owner about a shared coordinate system, like their eyes are going to get glazed over, right? As soon as you start to talk to people about survey and survey control, they're bored.
Yeah.
they're like, I'm not necessarily, it feels too much like an intermediate step, right? Whereas digital twin feels like something that's going to help me manage this asset.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I like asking some of these questions. Yeah, digital twin, that's one that you hear. So I keep seeing people talk about, I've seen somebody show a mesh of a site that was scanned and calling that a digital twin. I've seen a BIM model somebody called a digital twin. I'm like, what is digital twin? So for me, I really think, like you said, it's, to me, the digital twin, and I think there's a different definition of digital twin for different industries. Mm-hmm. But what I do think, for at least the way I look at it right now, is like, there is scanning, there's photo documentation, there's pulling tape measures. All of those things are collecting existing information.
Yep.
That's nothing new. It's new for a lot of people, but that's the capturing of data. There's the turning that into CAD drawings or models, which is also still as builting. It's a existing model that is more accurate. Really, the trade-off for me when I talk about digital twin is like the next step. Yep. It's like you said, the integration of sensors or data, but ultimately, that's, I think, really the term that the dream project would have. The shared coordinates with the photos, with the data being captured, being able to analyze, with the accurate model of the building through construction for BIM coordination, clash detection, avoiding, and then an actual model at the end of a build or a renovation that is the true as-built of the building, so that when they need it again, they don't have to start all the way over.
Yeah.
Because no as-built today is really an as-built. It's an old drawing that someone was like, all right, well, it looks like it was built properly, And that's the whole reason scanning and all this is needed on the upfront of existing projects. Now it's like, okay, the idea of turning someone's building into a digital replica of the physical building now gives you all this data and information that can be used in the future for renovations or a cell or layout planning or all of this other information.
The digital twin sort of buzz is an opportunity to have a better conversation about how we combine these different technologies and what they do. And yeah, like I hope it's continues to evolve in a way that allows it to be used for good.
Yeah.
And not just marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm going to ask you another one.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's down the same vein. The metaverse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The metaverse, is, I'm in the category of people who have put on, and which is, I'll call out that this is a very different category of person than some other people at our company who, like, Brian Vizaretta, who's got 75 VR headsets like in front of him while he works. And then, like, my co-founder Philip, who's been into this since the early days as well. I'm more like the old man who puts on the headset and is like, this is pretty cool, but I'm gonna go back now.
Yeah.
and I'm just not there yet.
Yeah.
And so I think it's exciting that we could build digital worlds,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a place for that. And I think what's possible in a digital world where you're sort of immersed in that environment is incredible.
Yeah.
I think there's amazing things that are coming there
Mm-hmm.
that I am excited about. I haven't found like VR as an experience to be that compelling for me personally.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really found like a business use case for what we do here yet.
Yep.
But I think actually I've seen some of our customers do.
Mm-hmm.
Proves that there's a value there.
Yeah.
And that there is some really amazing stuff happening. And the way that you can collaborate and design, like, again, I keep going back to like less commercial use cases and
Yep.
more, how do we build better
Yeah.
with this as a tool, and less, how do I buy real estate in a virtual world with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, and I think that's exciting, and I think there are some really cool things happening there.
Yep.
But yeah, the term itself is pretty nebulous. What do you think about the metaverse?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of thoughts.
Let's hear 'em.
It's why I like asking and just, talking about these ideas with different people. I kind of think similar lines to digital twin as I do metaverse. I think that there's a couple different ways people are looking at metaverse. One is that it is just about virtual reality and gaming experiences. There's another that believe that there will be one ultimate virtual world that
Ready Player One
style, which there's parts I'll talk about that I like.
Yeah.
Parts of that. But some people are hooked on the idea of, I hate the metaverse because it's Ready Player One. It's like you're going to live your life in there, and you log in and you never leave your house. And and as soon as I started digging into the idea of metaverse and the fact that we're in this world where we are focused on digitizing real world into a digital world.
Yep.
And you look at, again, so many people that think about metaverse now, they don't know anything about our world. They don't know that we're out there scanning and creating digital environments of real assets and environments and cities and buildings. And they only understand it from like a gaming side or the videos they've seen from, Meta or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I look at the mix of these tools, I see the mix of the internet and geospatial data. I think of things like when you look at, so many people are already working on things like this, but like self-driving cars, right? If you want those cars to work, there's the idea of that car has sensors and LiDAR and photo and whatever, built into it, but also how much better if it had a virtual replica of all the streets and signals and buildings and assets. And I think about the things that could be done in the real world with having digital replica of it.
Yeah.
Not only the idea of creating a like made up virtual world, but the ways that the digital and the physical can be mixed is how I think our industry plays into what the metaverse could be when it's the mix of physical and digital.
The metaverse needs laser scanning.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I think of it really as that next step past digital twin of like, how do we then, I'll use an example of like, there's an asset owner who has 1,000 facilities across the US, and they want digital replicas of their facility for the use case of when they're ready to do an equipment replacement or really using the as-built information. Yep. But what if it gets to the point that it can be that every facility is documented and they have their own virtual world, their own company metaverse that employees could log into and virtually go visit any of their facilities for project, applications.
Yeah.
So I kind of think of it in some of those aspects of like, okay, the hype is there because of the word and like the general public's like pushing virtual reality and meta and all this.
Yeah.
But I really do think there's applications like that. And even the integration of like using virtual reality for working physically in another job site. Like, have you seen any of those where, there's a tractor driver in an office space using joysticks, and across state he's used, the tractor he's using is across the other state. It's like, to me, it's that idea of mixing all these technologies in the real world.
Tractor trailers, people controlling them remotely. I feel like there's another, I guess I keep going back to business use cases for this, where it's like, that's like a future of work situation where you have one thing that's been very interesting for us to watch during the pandemic was the evolution of managing stuff remotely. Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about is just another form of remote work, right? Yeah. This is sort of like the future of work conversation, where what does something like that do to unlock labor here with work to be done here that's somewhere else? And that will also, I think, be one of those like massively transformational things that comes out of whatever the metaverse ends up being. Yeah. Whether it's even part of that or not, like specifically this idea that somebody could be participating in a project or working on something from a very different place. I mean, it's happening already. It's just happening in a very lightweight form. I mean, you guys are been supporting projects all over the place. Yep. Maybe not immersively today. Yeah. But there's probably a future where people can do jobs that require more physical presence. Yeah. But because they have tools that sort of put them there, we watched that happen with certain clients where over the pandemic they were like, well, this is going to be how we manage projects now. Because I used to fly somebody 3,000 miles to go, 500 miles to go see this thing, and now you're just not. You're going to do that once a month, and it's not. That's not probably accurate. It's I'm going to do it less often. Yeah, and save myself some time and some money. Yeah, totally. I think the uses for technologies for that type of remote situation are going to definitely increase. And you said Ready Player One, right? Did I open the door?
You did. I literally think so many jobs are going to turn into Ready Player One style working. Like for those that hadn't seen it, there's this scene where this whole corporation has an entire room full of these VR stations that their employees go get onto this platform, put on this vest, have their controllers and their VRs on, and that is then they are the military in the virtual world. I literally am like, okay, in the future, that's going to be our army, our military. Yeah. Like we are already getting so close to fully like human robotics that can run, that can carry, that can jump, that can, when are we going to send robots to war, instead of people? And they can just control it virtually, just like drone racing does right now, right? Yeah. Like drone pilots put on goggles and they fly drones all over the place and maneuver and, fly through holes and whatever. I literally think that the future, that type of connection to robotics to work in hazardous environments and dangerous facilities and I think there's going to be a lot of industries like that. And even when it gets to more simplistic, like you look at our retail shopping and our grocery stores and our, things like Amazon, where they've come out with these stores where you literally, there's no cashier. You walk in and there's technology that's tracking you and what you pick up and what you put down and what's in your basket, and you just walk out and it charges you.
Yeah.
Like the integration of technology into more of the day-to-day life, I think that's going to go so fast over the next 5 to 10 years. Drone deliveries getting approved. Like I that's why I look at this metaverse term and I'm like, I see this as like all of this technology taking over a lot of what today's workforce is, but it also is exciting because it frees us up to work on the more challenging problems.
Yeah, there's always this. I was just listening to a podcast on the way over here where they were talking about exactly this and how throughout the course of human history, we're consistently going through this evolution of jobs that existed to get taken over completely by technology. And there's always some friction there because people are either have to upskill and lose and move into something new, or you have people who are just out of work. And so that's always been a really sort of difficult part of that conversation.
Yeah.
But ultimately it is net positive for humanity.
Yeah.
And so we have to sort of figure out how to adapt along the way. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think I share a lot of your excitement for where these technologies can all come together. And yeah, you're right. I think that the term metaverse right now is more like being co-opted by people who are, more like there's a lot of like buzz around, again, like ownership in this space.
Yeah.
And like even like crypto and other things that are sort of associated with this new world, as almost like you're on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Right? You're on people are dying of dysentery and like playing that game. And so, yeah, that's kind of what the metaverse is right now, right? It's the frontier.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, there's a lot in the future. I have a question. Let's go back to your focus and the technology piece. It just popped in my head, so I wanted to ask. Is there any integration or thought around integrating like drone capture as well into your platform? It just popped up. I'm like sitting here thinking, okay, photo document and the 360, and then I think about the drone piece and like accessing both of those in one spot.
Yeah, we get this is becoming a more popular question, and I think the reason is because we have there's a few platforms that are very popular. There's like Drone Deploy being one of them, right? And so I think ultimately our goal, kind of to my point earlier about like what are we focused on right now? Are we focused on aggregation of data sources, or are we focused on delivering value with the data we have and sort of aggregating over time? And it goes back to still very focused on aggregating over time because we want to be focused on tracking progress. But yes, we do have more and more customers. Somebody just posted, I think it was Gordon Chisholm of Bailey Harris, posted a LinkedIn video of him flying, we've got an attachment that hangs on the bottom of a drone now that lets you do a video walk, right, on a drone. And yes, like that's all very exciting. But the companies that have built drone software, for example, Drone Deploy, have invested years into building something that looks easy and is for the user, right? But ultimately is not easy for a company that's not them to recreate. And so I think what I hope for this industry is like continued integration of these different sources, data sources, so that end of the day, the end user, whether that be the owner or the contractor, whoever, or even a 3D service provider, can have a easier way to share this data between platforms, because it is a little bit locked up today. Yeah. And it's going to be very fascinating to watch this space continue to move and shake, right? As different players come together, as different players disappear, and so there's a lot of excitement around drones in particular for our customers, and it's not because they like want us to become a drone platform. It's because they, like you do, I think they see the value of integrating these data sources, and having one less place to go necessarily to find the thing they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think the starting point in data integration to me would be at least integrating different types of similar data. So before there's a platform that can take the survey and the laser scan and the point cloud and the imagery and the model and the the analysis of it, is like trying to get a platform where all my imagery can sit, and then a platform where my model and because, you know, we've even had some of that struggle as a service provider of like, we have a Faro scanner and a Leica scanner and a Navis VLX, and we also do photo documentation and we also do drone. And it's like, well, dang it, if we want to use all those on one job, you know, I have to use this imagery, but this point cloud, but this, because I can't, you know, some of them are proprietary to their own platforms. And so I'd have to send the client 3 logins. That to me is frustrating, right? And I think that's why you see folks like Philip, my co-founder, and Josh Stefano from DPR are on these like standards committees to try to create these open standards for sharing of information across a shared coordinate system, have a consistent way of sharing data. You know, there's also some great work being done with like our head of product, Brianna, and the Construction Progress Coalition, really focused on the way data flows back and forth between platforms there. We need to continue the work that's happening there and support it more, because this idea, you know, that it's all going to be one platform to rule them all is I don't think that's what's best for the industry. Yeah. I think what's best is people being able to decide when and where to integrate what they want, so that if this project has these 3 solutions, great. Let's try to get them to live in one place. But yeah, I see this like sort of like arms race for being like the one platform to rule them all type of situation. And I think I would question whether or not that's exactly what customers want, relative to having a way for vendors like ourselves to just very easily integrate this data using that shared coordinate system into other systems as needed. So that each of those puzzle pieces can continue to try to focus on being great at what they do. As opposed to being mediocre at a bunch of stuff. No, I think that's a great point. We've definitely seen the need where we used terrestrial scanning and StructionSite at the same time. Even though we had we had projects where, you know, we would do color scans, we would deliver, you know, online WebShare, TrueView, whatever else. But then there's times where it's like the time it takes to do the photo capture in a scanner and on a large scale project versus like actually do the photo documentation and the scanning is a faster and better deliverable. So I think there's always going to be that, you know, benefit from one technology to the other. And my hope is that we get more help from vendors in creating some of these matrix and like really helping customers pick the right solution. Because that's another piece that I see happen a lot is, as soon as a company finds out about, you know, these new technologies, they don't even know how do I pick which one's right for me? Like what am I really trying to accomplish, and what is the best option? You know, do I just need photos to start, or do I need scanning? And if I need scanning, is mobile accurate enough? You know, someone's telling me to use a Navis, someone's telling me to use a Leica P50, and someone's telling me to use a Matterport. You know, it's like, well, they all have different pros and cons. They all have different accuracies. They all have different outcomes and data. They all have, and I think there's just a big lack, I think, in the educational material available for users and owners and project teams to really know, okay, here's exactly what we would like on this job. Here's the menu. Here's the ones we're selecting, and here's why.
Yeah, I think your opportunity here is to strip away all of that complexity and just get it. No owner cares about any of that. They don't want to care about what device it got captured with. They have an idea in their head of, you know, this is the building or the asset that I want. This is what it should do. This is what performance looks like. And like, this is what I want it. And that's all they should have to care about, you know. And it's a challenge to try to. I think there's like the value that you guys are bringing here, and I think that continue to do with RCN is like keep that education in a place where it's helpful, but also is just allows those people to just very quickly make a decision on what do I need here and what piece of technology can get me there. And how do I make sure that, you know, I don't have to listen to specific vendors necessarily, because the incentives are not great, right? For every vendor to be able to say what they can do or not. So I think there's a ton of value there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the continued feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there anything else you want to hit as a topic? I think we've covered a good amount.
We have, yeah. No, I mean, I guess I don't know if I get to ask you questions.
Sure, why not?
Or
wow,
how that,
this is great.
or how that all works. No, but I just, I kind of want to see what, like, how do you want or think this? Let's call it the reality capture for let's say focus more on the sort of building and construction side. How do you see this space evolving and why?
I think my usual answer to a question along that route, well, I guess it's a little different. If it was like, what's next, like what's coming, or what do you want to see? Like, the thing I'm most focused on is just the current tools and implementing them properly and more.
Yeah.
Like, I see so many companies using tools the wrong way. I see kind of poor workflows resulting in bad data, which is causing issues to clients and project teams that I'm like, so my initial my focus right now is really on educating both the end user, whether it's the owner or the GC or whoever it is that's kind of in charge of getting this project accomplished. If they're looking for scanning or modeling or documentation, it's really educating the client on what they should be asking for, trying to build some more knowledge base there from the end side, but then also a pretty big focus on all the people that are trying to adopt it in-house or use it as a service or build a department, because I see so many people picking a tool and then coming out with a bad result and ending in an issue.
Yeah.
Today, like, I consistently get calls that are like, we have this messed up project and we're trying to figure out how to fix it. So I get that call so much. That's my number one goal today, is like fixing the accuracies and the technology implementation within reality capture industry. Then it's scaling this. It's like we talked about. I think that there are 2 out of 10 job sites using any of these tools a little bit, let alone like using it all the time for the progress tracking, or doing it as a monthly or a weekly basis, or actually using the BIM model properly for coordination purposes, or so my goal is really to continue educating on all the tools and the ways to implement them, and just try to scale the use of that, but do it properly.
Yeah, right on. No, I mean, I don't know what the future holds either, but yeah, the what's in the future thing is always a little bit of hand waving anyway, right?
Yeah,
we don't know what's going to happen, and no, I think we're the same way for what it's worth, right? We're trying to meet the industry where it is.
Yeah,
and a lot of times we're so worried about what the new bit of AI is that's gonna track this thing and do something amazing for your business. But like, the reality is, you get out and do a job trailer and the guy forgot his Procore login, so he can't get into your tool.
Yeah,
these are the actual things that are happening in in the field. And so yeah, we're just trying to stay grounded in the reality of getting the industry to move to crawl.
Yes.
Before it, we stand up and try to sprint.
Yep. Yeah, that's why when it is the question about like, what's the next technology, I always am just like, I literally don't care.
Yeah.
I just want to see the ones that are already here work, and I want people to use them properly. Especially when, my big focus really is around survey, terrestrial laser scanning, mobile laser scanning, how to keep that accurate and turn that into usable data. So when it comes to that kind of life cycle that I'm heavily entrenched in, that I get really into the weeds there of like, well, this scanner, isn't going to hit the 1/8 inch tolerance you want for a floor flatness report. And if you don't use survey, you're accumulating error and your tilt. And I get deep into that, where a lot of people just buy a scanner and go out on the job. And that's why I see a lot of mess up happening. A lot of people don't know the real deep technicalities of keeping those data accurate.
Yeah, it's the consumerization of survey.
Yeah.
Which is a little dangerous sometimes. Yeah. But it's part of the pain of making progress.
It is.
I think.
Yep.
We got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great. I think there's so many good tools coming out. I think there's uses for all of this, from the drone to the photo to the scanning. I'm just excited to continue helping build and grow the industry at whole. I think the only thing we're missing is more awareness. And so our goal is trying to push that, for the hardware, for the software, for the users, to the owner, really the whole industry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I really appreciate you having me and look forward to taking another very short flight up here for the conference.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming up, and we will include some information about you and StructionSite in the episode as we release it so people can find you and check it out.
Alrighty. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks for coming.